Welcome to Reflections, a program where we discuss values and virtues for the transformation of the individual and the society in general. I am Father George Ehusani, and I have with me in the studio once again my friend Nurudeen Lemu from the Diwa Foundation.
Yeah, and the Islamic Education Trust.
And Islamic Education Trust. You're welcome once again.
Thank you very much, Father.
Now, we are talking about Nigeria at the crossroads. Nigeria at the crossroads. With the activities of the champions of Biafra, resurgence of the Biafra, and with the activities of the Arewa youth that are calling for eviction, we have a problem. We have discussed in previous segments of this recording of this program. In previous segments, we have discussed about what scenarios may emerge from all this tension. We have also discussed what is the responsibility of religious leaders in an environment of ethnic tension and ethnic antipathies, and how that does not square with our religious beliefs in the one God. Now, there are real and perceived grievances that must be dealt with, and government must be held accountable for dealing with these real and perceived injustices, structural problems. People believe that we are supposed to be a federation, but we are not running real federation. It's like a unitary system. People believe that the center is too powerful. You are part of the National Confab in 2014, and your voice was very much heard in that confab. Well, we just heard recently the Parliament calling for National Assembly calling for deliberations on that the reports of that National Confab. But there is cry everywhere. I had somebody on this program, and when he was telling me that, even as we are complaining about what's going on now, there are real issues to be solved, and so on and so forth. When you hear that from those that come from what we call dominant groups in society, in Nigerian society, Igbo, Hausa, or Yoruba, I say to them, what about those of us from minority groups? Those of us who are neither Igbo, nor Hausa, nor Yoruba, we don't even seem to have a say in this country. It's as if we don't matter. We too are angry. We too are angry. The fact that somebody from my place cannot today aspire to be president in the next election is annoying.
Oh yes.
So it means the Hausas are angry, the Igbos are angry, the Yorubas are angry, then the Ijos are angry. But I am saying the Ibiras are angry, the TV are angry, the Igalas are angry. So what do we do about this anger that is coming from every sector in this country? What can be done?
If I start with a metaphor, when a snake bites you, what do? Some decide, I am more important than the snake, so let me go and suck the poison out and carry on with my life. Others are so angered by the snake
But they are pursuing the snake.
that they are pursuing the snake and must kill the snake. Meanwhile, the poison continues to flow, and before you know it, when you come to talk, you are coughing blood. It's disgusting. The same thing with how we handle anger and the grievances. One of the core teachings of faith is, yes, we teach justice so as not to perpetuate anger, but we also teach forgiveness so that people also take the responsibility to suck the poison out of themselves. What is worse is when the anger is spread to another generation as secondary trauma, and where the next generation is made to feel guilty if it doesn't react to the anger of the first generation. And this happens in every tribe. You find hostilities between two or more tribes running down centuries.
For sure.
And you ask yourself, where is the role of faith in this? Yes, some of these grievances are real, some are perceived. But these are not new. These grievances were there when we had our independence. These grievances have been there before and after the last civil war. These grievances will always be there until earth becomes heaven. There will always be somebody who says, I have not had enough.
Yes.
And there's always going to be somebody who says, I am not happy with what I have. So regarding grievances and suffering on one level or another, this is a reality of life. Fortunately, we're not in hell, but this is earth, it's not heaven either. What human beings have done as the best way to handle these things is to sit together, come up with, number one, criteria that we will agree to use
for our negotiation.
Most of these criteria have centered around the golden rule. That you love for the other what you love for yourself. That you will not do unto the others what you wouldn't want others to do unto you. That you don't throw sand in somebody else's gari, if we use that metaphor. If somebody wants something and it's not harming you, let them have it. And vice versa. And so while that rule sounds simple, it is when we have mutual interests and we have to divide the national cake that very often the tribal sentiment kicks up and we forget about compassion. We want the bigger side of the cake, but even when we come on the state level or on the regional level,
still the problem is
the same problem of, okay, so how do we divide our slice of the cake? Does the poor person get what he deserves at the end, or is he treated as an inferior citizen? And so we delude ourselves. We start with saying we're doing it for our people.
Yes.
But once you've finally been given what is for your people, you actually find that's only because there was another people that you perceived as enemy. As you'll find in movies, the only time humanity gets together as one is when there is alien invasion.
When there's a common enemy.
Common enemy. The moment the enemy is off the table,
they face one another.
We face one another.
I mean, the critical example is South Sudan. Now, South Sudan had a common enemy, not Sudan or whatever, Sudan. And for 40 years, they fought a war. And that is my own warning for Nigerians who are calling for their own separate states. Now, South Sudan in 2012 became an independent country, the newest country in Africa. But between then and now, South Sudan has not known peace. In fact, there has been more bitter war since then. And my fear about any group that wants to come out of Nigeria today is that you come out of Nigeria, you face one another.
Oh yes.
That's it.
Right.
I mean, you come out of Nigeria only to face one another for a more bitter war than you ever had when you were together.
And I think, honestly, the moment in your heart you're more concerned about yourself than others, whether as an individual or as a collective, and you honestly don't care about others, no amount
of division
would make you satisfied, because it's all back to what am I getting, and you really don't love for the other what you love for yourself.
After all, we started as 3 regions, political regions, and then we got to 4 regions, then we got to 12 states and 19 states and 21 states and 36 states, non-viable entities. But we are still calling for,
there's an increase in the volume of the injustice, and if we take it, societies change. The older generation saw a civil war. They would like to make sure nothing like that happens again.
Yes.
The generals that are presently alive
will not want to see any war.
Will never want to see the death of their comrades having gone to waste. Any economist would say, if we can work out around our egos and stay together, we are stronger
when we are together.
When we are together than if we fall apart. And there is the real fear of balkanization, that the moment you say one part move, another one will come, new divisions come. We've seen it all over the world. So when it comes to what can we do, what should we do, I think technology has played an important role in the amount of strength we now have. Democracy has made us more vocal. We now realize we can talk to leadership. But as corporations have gotten stronger, as business interests have gotten stronger, as international NGOs have become stronger, we find greater strength of international interference coming in, greater influence of international concerns. Religions that during post-colonial period played a very little role are playing a much greater role. Media is playing a much greater role than it ever played before. These non-state players and actors are challenging the power of the state to plan and to keep people together. And while the state may want to retain some form of federal character, the challenge is the other sectors are not. And sometimes they are even being led by tribal or ethnic or religious bigotry and sentiments that lobby the state and influence the state actors to act contrary to the
interest of the commonality,
and of what we've agreed on, that is our constitution. The constitution is in old language, the treaty, the alliance, the agreement that keeps us together. And if as time passes by, we feel that agreement that was signed by my parents or my grandparents is not suiting my present reality, if that agreement is not suiting my present reality, we would like a constitutional review. We would like another confab to renegotiate peacefully the terms of our agreement, the terms of this forced marriage, but so that it's not a forced marriage, it's willing. Yes, you may not have all the freedoms and everything as you would want. You will have to be responsible for and be your brother's keeper, and that's part of the agreement. But that probably needs to be done more often than it used to be.
Now, there are people who feel that the present constitution we are running is a lie, in the sense that it begins by saying we the people agree, but that it is the military that foisted that constitution on us. And some of those people are calling for, you get that a lot from the Southwest, calling for a sovereign national conference, and that they have been getting something much less than what they have been calling for. They have been getting a guided conference, as it were, national conference rather than a sovereign national conference. And on the other side, you have people who say, look, there is a government in place. It may not be perfect, but there's a government in place. You have representatives. The elections may not be flawless, but there were elections that produced a number of these people, and they are in the houses of assembly, state houses of assembly, and national assembly. So let them do the job. All kinds of conflicting. You were in the national confab, the latest one, 2014. What is your view about this thing about the constitution not being true document of the people and calling for a sovereign conference? Is the kind of conference you took part in, do you consider it sufficient to solve these crying issues in our country, or do we really need a sovereign national conference where whoever is president can say, look, I go on suspension, you guys decide what you want to do with yourselves, as it were?
I think firstly, if you're looking for problems with anything, you will always find them. During the national conference in 2014, the objective was not just to handle some of these grievances. It was actually to look at how to move the country forward in agriculture, in transport. There were about 20 separate committees that were looking into various aspects of the country, from education to healthcare, environment, etc. So it wasn't one that was focusing on restructuring only. There was a committee that looked into that, and they brought their proposals forward. I think talking is useful, especially by the most important stakeholders. I think those suggestions and conclusions of the national conference should have been put online.
Made available for people.
Made available. We live in a time when if you can get your constitution as an app, then why can't we get various proposals and let people know what was discussed and what was arrived at by the brains that actually discussed these things.
And it is not a secret document. It's not supposed to be.
No. It's not legally binding. And some would question the whole conference. The question you asked about we the people of Nigeria, etc. I think this is going into semantics. We seem not to complain whenever we say, I pledge to Nigeria, my country.
But I didn't compose it.
We seem to have no problem with arise, O compatriots, and compatriots are my fellow Nigerians. I think if the question is, and if the concern is that the current constitution has not adequately met our needs, and there's the need for another constitutional review, this is not the first time, it will not be the last time. And various non-state and even state actors are saying, let us have that review, then yes, let us have it. And let it be done by the most competent and best representation of the various stakeholders. It is good to talk. It is good to understand where others are coming from. So that if times have changed and certain things that were acceptable before, fair in the eyes of the past, have become clearer, or it's become clearer that these are not as fair as we would like, and we would like to address them again, then definitely it is better to resolve these issues on a table than to allow hate speech and grievances to take them out of government hands.
In the history of our country and the history of these conferences and the call for this dialogue confabs, we have always had at least two groups of people, more than two, but at least we can identify those that are in the government of the day. We say, well, there are structures in place, let us do the job. Those that are out of the government of the day will say, let's have a national conference, let's have a sovereign national conference, irrespective of the fact that there are people who are occupying positions today. Now, what do you think should be the way forward in terms of even agreeing on how to carry on this dialogue? I think practically every Nigerian agrees that there needs to be some dialogue. It's just in what form? What do you think should be the way forward? We all seem to agree, especially when it comes to fiscal federalism, because we can reduce this whole problem to how we share the cake. There is very little discussion about how we bake the cake, as you know. Very little discussion about how we generate resources. It is about how we share the cake. So it is about the fact that many people genuinely complain that we don't have genuine, sincere fiscal federalism. A situation where 36 governors will queue up in Abuja to collect their handouts every month and run to their states to spend this at whatever. It is not desirable. People think we need to return to a situation where states generated the resources and decided how to spend the resources and pay taxes to the national government. What do you think?
I think there are certain decisions that we can advise those who we have put in office to do jobs that we believe they are better at doing than we are. When you elect those who would be House of Representative members, when you elect people who on your state will be members of your House of Assembly, when you elect senators, when you elect people who will study the laws, represent you, and represent the best interest of the nation at the same time, not just you, to then say, forget about them, I think is irresponsible of us, because we wouldn't do that in any other field. We wouldn't do that in medicine.
We wouldn't train doctors and say forget about
doctors on healthcare. What do we all feel should be the way forward? Then on issues to do with finance and economics, forget about the economics. On issues to do with politics, forget about the politicians. Why do we pick a particular issue, and on that topic we will not use the same criteria as we would use for others?
Does it not mean that a number of Nigerians have doubt the credibility of a number of people who are occupying those positions?
Absolutely.
They don't seem to doubt the credibility of the doctors who have gone for training for many years and are inducted as medical doctors. But many seem to doubt credibility of a number of political office holders.
And I think absolutely you're right. But I think this is where we seem to like one side of democracy, which is to put certain people in power. But we seem, after we've put them in power, to stand back, no lobbying, no accounting, no ensuring that they do what they should do. And when they don't perform, we want to blame the whole system instead of looking in the mirror and seeing our fault. We prefer to look out of the window and see who to blame.
I say our responsibility as citizens, our responsibility as those that have been represented, to constantly drag the feet of our representatives to the fire of democracy. I mean, Nigerians seem to think that democracy will thrive while I do nothing. Democracy is government of the people.
Yeah.
So if it is government of the people, whoever is there on my behalf. Yeah. There needs to be a constant communication between me and the person who is representing me. And I dare say that even when somebody gets there with doubtful credentials, meaning maybe not very, the manner in which he or she is elected is not very clear. A lot of our elections in Nigeria today are decided by the courts rather than by INEC. Good. So if there are doubts there, but then while he or she is there, to make sure that he or she does my bidding or the bidding of my people. So I may not be happy with who is there, but I have a responsibility to make sure that he plays the game according to the rules, that he does what my people want him to do, since he has gotten there anyway, and until the court removes him, he is there.
Absolutely. And I think part of it also is just human guilty conscience. When people know they have accepted bribes, accepted all sorts of favors, and continue to go for favors, with the sole purpose of putting somebody in power or leaving them in power,
then they lose their own voice.
They lose their own voice and they want to carry out their frustration. So instead of blaming yourself for putting that person in,
you say the whole system should come down.
You say the whole system should come down. I think this is I don't like to use the word hypocrisy that we find, but I don't have another terminology. But this is where I think civil society organizations, faith-based organizations, have an important role to play in putting pressure, lobbying, advocating, and ensuring that even if some of the electorate will not see, know, care, they have more systematic ways of calling people to account. So the blame game is something anybody can play. And all you need to say is, and you see it from marriages to students in school, if you want to blame the other one for all the faults, you can carry on with your long list. But it takes honesty to look in the mirror and see your role in how you have contributed to the status quo.
The role you played or you failed to play.
Precisely. Action or inaction.
Now, we are bringing this segment to an end. Can you help us and our viewers and listeners to identify some of the grievances, outline now, just a quick outline, some of the grievances that have brought all this about from north to south and east and west? Can we attempt to just outline?
I think there is the issue of the formula of dividing the national cake, especially that coming from oil. There is the
derivation or lack of derivation. Yeah.
There is the concern about how much power is in federal versus state.
Correct.
There is the grievance between how much is with the state and how much is with the local government.
Yes.
There is the grievance in some states that the state government does not represent a particular ethnic group, as you've mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
There is the feeling that some parts of the country have been having a good time, making millions, have not done anything for their people, and still want to blame the other side of the country. There is the feeling that some sides of the country feel they are being viewed as parasites by the other. Yeah. If it's agriculture, some view the other side as parasites. If it is oil, another view. If it's cash crops, another view. If it is who contributes to the domestic work of people, some would say, our region, we've got more of you working here than the other way around. And that's why you'll hear Arewa youth saying, then go back. Not because anybody is serious about telling anybody to go back, but it's a grievance that they want to show that, look, we all are interdependent.
Yeah.
And if you want to emphasize independence instead of respecting interdependence, then people would want to just get defensive and start accusing.
I think if we go beyond this cake sharing mentality, if Nigerians move from cake sharing mentality to cake baking mentality, we will recognize that every part of this country, every square meter of land in this country has resources.
Oh yeah, I mean we've got little countries in size in various parts of West Africa. We don't need to go far.
Yes.
Who are smaller than some states, but richer than some states. Not because of even natural. It's just we have not looked at how best to exploit our own and handle our own internal challenges.
So rather than face one another and keep accusing one another, the solution, one prime solution to our problem is, first of all, we need to look into leadership. Yes. We need to look into the quality of people we put forward to lead us. Yes. Because a lot of the problems we have been having since independence is failure of leadership. Yes. We have had, in the main, a lot of ethnic warlords. We have had a lot of religious bigots. We have had people who have no business occupying government house, who have been occupying government house in various places. Yes. It is time for us to begin formation, training for leadership at every level, from the nursery school, training people for leadership, people to recognize that leadership is about sacrifice, leadership is about vision, leadership is about purpose, to train people who have all it takes to take people from a less developed state to a more developed state. I think that when we do that, and then we now look into how to harvest, and that is still the responsibility of leadership, to harvest the potentials of the people, then we will be moving somewhere. And let us stop just blaming one another and thinking that the next person is our problem.
Yeah. And I think sometimes one of the things we need to do is empathize.
Yes.
To appreciate the other side has genuine grievances.
Yes.
And actually, every side has genuine grievances.
That is why I say, and I will end on this note, that when you guys, you're Hausa speaking, right?
Yes.
Now,
Nupe by tribe.
Nupe by tribe. Okay, you're not Hausa, but Nupe by tribe. But they are
speaking. Yes.
They are your cousins.
Yes.
So
as you are.
When you guys who are Hausa speaking, when those guys who are Igbo speaking, when those guys who are Yoruba, when they keep fighting among one another and think that the country Nigeria belongs to them, I say we who are Ibira, we who are TV, we who are Igala, we who are of this, okay, you're adding your own, we who are of the smaller tribes, we are angry, and when put together we are plenty. So if it is the balance of forces if it is the balance of forces, we can do a lot of harm, but we know that it will not lead anywhere.
No.
Just recognize, like the point you ended up with, that let us empathize with one another and recognize that each side has genuine grievances. Let us come to the table and resolve it. On this note, we will bring this program to an end. It has been wonderful having you in the studio discussing Nigeria at the crossroads. God bless you and continue the good work you are doing. I do hope that with our interfaith activity and partnership for people, we can do a lot more than we have been doing in the last few years.
May God help us all.
God bless you.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you.
Cool.